Support for The Common comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Big or small, every case gets their full attention and most creative thinking. Their litigators are committed to resolving disputes in and out of the courtroom. Learn more at davismalm.com. Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, a company accelerating the pace of engineering and science. Stick around until the end of this episode for a special segment about how companies like Nuvera Fuel Cells use MathWorks software to design engineered systems powering the clean energy transition.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. WBUR climate and environment correspondent Barbara Moran.
Hello, hello, and today I'm a political correspondent, too.
Oh, yeah, political correspondent for the day, Barbara Moran. This is WBUR News via The Common. All right, seriously, though, we are talking environment, which is your jam.
Yep.
And politics, which might be less your jam, but
well put.
We got to get into it, right?
We do, because politics matters for this election.
Yes, it does.
And for the climate.
Yes, we're here to discuss with you what the nomination for president between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris could mean for the environment.
Yep.
Not only in America, but here in Massachusetts specifically.
Yes.
I want to start this off by first asking you, can you just explain to us the impact that a president can have on environmental policy? Like the short-term impact, the longer-term impact?
Yeah, huge impacts. And especially with these two presidential candidates that we're facing, because their ideas and platforms on climate and environment could not be more different. The country, and us in Massachusetts and New England is approaching these really important decision points, right? Where we need to get our, carbon emissions down by 2030, which would lead us to 2050, right? So we need to get these down now in order to avoid the worst effects of climate change, right? Mm-hmm. So we are at this really critical point, and the major difference between the two candidates, I think I can fairly say, is that Harris thinks that climate is a existential crisis, and Trump doesn't think climate change is a big deal.
And is it fair to say that Harris would kind of continue Biden's approach to climate if she were elected, I should say?
Yeah, so that's the assumption. Biden has passed huge climate legislation, and he has big policies meant to transition us to renewable energy, create a lot of green jobs, a big focus on environmental justice. Harris has adopted the existing Democratic platform without any changes, so it's assumed that she'll move forward with that. There are some questions about whether she'll add some additional things, but she hasn't said anything about that yet. Donald Trump's platform is quite different. He focuses on more drilling for oil and gas, shrinking the federal workforce, and a lot of deregulation. So similar to what he did during his first presidency, but more so. I made a big sacrifice for BUR, and I went and listened to both of the speeches from the RNC and the DNC and read their platforms. I'll just play a clip of Trump from his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention.
I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill.
That's his favorite. And then Harris, for her part, at her acceptance speech at the DNC, she talked a lot about, freedom to vote and freedom for reproductive rights, and she included climate in that list of freedoms.
The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water and live free from the pollution that fuels the climate crisis.
I should note that the official Republican platform does not mention climate at all.
Okay.
And the Democratic platform has a whole chapter on it.
Okay. All right. So thank you for laying all that out for us, because now I want to bring it home to Massachusetts so that listeners can get a sense of how this could all rain down on us.
Yes.
In either direction.
Yes, because who cares about the nation? We care about us right here.
That's right.
I get it.
Massachusetts first.
I get it. Okay, so the main thing is money, right? And I think this is a hallmark of the Biden administration is that Biden passed these two huge pieces of legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And those are big pieces of climate legislation. The money is like mind-boggling, right? It's like billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars going to a lot of infrastructure stuff like roads and bridges, but also to a lot of climate projects that's just pouring into Massachusetts and other New England states, right? Mm-hmm. I went and asked people, I'm like, well, the money's already coming in. Could Trump actually take it away? Right? Can you just come and take money back? And I interviewed this one guy who was like a really great source. His name was Matthew Tejada, and he is now with the Natural Resources Defense Council Action Fund. But he led the EPA's environmental justice program for the EPA under Obama, Trump, and Biden. So he saw the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And this is what he told me about the potential of all that money disappearing.
People need to understand that many of these programs, even if they're already, walking out the door, they can be pulled back in.
So he told me that Trump is unlikely, if elected, to pull back a lot of money for stuff like roads, new water pipes, things like that, but that he would probably target things like environmental justice programs. And here's what he said about that.
I think a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was so equity focused and really about climate change, right? I think all of that stuff is going to be on an immediate list.
And when I listened to the Trump speech at the Republican National Convention, Trump pretty much said that this is the case in his own words. So I wanted to play that clip.
And all of the trillions of dollars that are sitting there not yet spent, we will redirect that money for important projects like roads, bridges, dams, and we will not allow it to be spent on meaningless green new scam ideas.
It's a scam.
It's a scam. So I mean, some of the green new scam ideas, which have, the money has come into Massachusetts or is coming in, is like going to the city of Springfield, Massachusetts, to build like community solar, to convert low-income housing to renewable energy, to avoid pollution, to restart their e-bikes program. So things like that are what could conceivably be targeted and the money taken away if Trump is reelected.
And we can reasonably assume that Harris would continue this because she cast a vote for this bill that was the tie-breaking vote.
That is correct. Yes. And she has made a big point during her campaigning of promoting a lot of this money rolling out. So it's assumed that she would keep it going, if not put more out there.
So I want to ask, what are environmental advocates asking for from Vice President Kamala Harris?
Yeah, so this is interesting because I think a lot of environmental advocates think that Biden's done a lot, but not enough, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we would still need to do a lot more to hit the climate goals that we need to avoid the worst effects of climate change. Now, advocacy groups that I'm hearing, they say that the Trump agenda would put us very, very far away from those goals, right? And if Harris sticks to the Biden agenda, then that's pretty good. But they would really like to see more from her. She's talked in the past about banning fracking, which is a way you get gas out of the shale rock. And she has backed away from that. I think people are pretty disappointed about that. It's a controversial point in Pennsylvania, which she needs to win, right? Tim Walz, her VP, has done a lot of very progressive environmental stuff in Minnesota, and they were sort of hoping she would pick up some of that stuff and put it into her policies, but we haven't seen that yet. So there's some squawking going on from the environmentalists, and something I like. Let's see a little more, Harris. Let's take it up a notch. But so far, she hasn't gone there.
Mm-hmm. So what's at stake as it relates to our economy?
So the one biggest thing I would say is, not only all this money, that's rolling in here that could disappear, right? But offshore wind is a big deal in Massachusetts. Trump has, again, said that he it's a little vague, but he does say he wants to put a stop to offshore wind on day one, was his quote. It's not clear if he could, stop the whole thing, but the federal government does approve the permits for new offshore wind projects. So they could certainly stop approving offshore wind projects and just stall that industry. And then the question is, does that stall offshore wind for 4 years and we lose ground? Or do the offshore wind companies say, this is just ridiculous? It's too hard to make it work here. We're just going to, pull out of this entirely.
Right.
And I think that's a question because the offshore wind has been struggling a little bit in recent years, despite, Biden's pro-wind agenda, just because of supply chain challenges, and Trump could really hurt the industry.
Understood.
He wants to hurt the industry.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of our economy that's affected by environmental policy.
He has also, mentioned several times that he's going to roll back all of Biden's electric vehicle mandates, right? Biden has passed rules about tailpipe emissions, which affect the auto industry, but he's also passed a lot of incentives for people to buy electric vehicles. So if you go out and buy an electric car, Daryl, you could get up to I think it's $5,000 or $7,000 back in federal funds and state rebates on top of that. So Trump has spoken out against EVs, so it's unclear if that might disappear as well.
Is the EPA, or how is the EPA preparing for a potential Trump presidency if he gets elected?
Yeah, so this was a really interesting conversation I had. So you may remember, I had to go back and review all this because I had sort of forgotten. But during the first Trump presidency, he had made an effort to sort of eliminate some federal employees, right? He really wants to trim down the government, right? And he was also seen as kind of anti-science, right? He purged climate change from a lot of the EPA websites. A lot of scientists were, stifled. I think a lot of EPA folks were very discouraged under the first Trump administration, and seeing him come back, they were like, well, what can we do, to sort of prepare ourselves? So I interviewed this woman named Indina Kipka, and she's an air permit specialist at our local EPA, and she's also a union leader, which is how she was allowed to talk to me. And she was there under the first Trump administration, and she talked to me about what it was like there.
That was a tough time for EPA scientists. We felt like there were decisions being made that were clearly made without the advice and blessing of career scientists. And we also felt like there was a culture of fear.
So what they did was their contract was up for renewal this year, and they added 2 things to the contract to sort of get ahead of this. And one was a scientific integrity clause, so that if a scientist speaks up for science or says, I don't really think that's really scientifically sound, then they can't get disciplined. Or if they are disciplined, they have recourse for that. So that was a big deal for them. And then they also added a lot of workplace flexibility things to their contract, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me until she was saying, well, one of the ways they try to purge employees is by making these very kind of draconian work requirements for them. Like you have to be, way up here in Maine 5 days a week, and you can't have any job flexibility. And that's how they are worried that a new Trump administration might try to get rid of employees, right? So they are trying to put as much into the union contract as they can to protect their workers going forward.
Understood. Barb, I could sit here and ask you more questions. I have more questions, but we don't have time. Womp, womp, womp. But thank you for your reporting and coming through to talk to us about it. I'm sure some folks will find this very helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, and it does have a huge effect on us. For the 2 candidates, this is the issue that they are most far apart on, night and day.
That's WBUR climate and environment correspondent and political reporter for today.
Yes.
Barbara Moran. All right, next up, we're going to talk about things to do this September with WBUR Assistant Director for CitySpace, Candice Springer. We'll be right back.
Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, the leading developer of mathematical computing software that accelerates innovation by allowing companies to test technology virtually.
They're able to understand how that system's going to work before they start to begin building hardware systems.
Stick around until the end of this episode for a special segment about how model-based design is helping engineers, scientists, and academics solve today's energy challenges.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. WBUR Assistant Director for CitySpace, Candice Springer.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Common.
Thank you.
So, Candice, September is here.
September is here, beginning of the fall.
I am so pleased.
Yes, me too.
I love the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to cool down.
100%.
I'm ready to layer up.
Yes.
I'm ready to cozy up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's time. Anyways, with that, September's a busy month, right? School starts, people moving in. We need things to do.
Yes.
What are we doing?
All right. I think I've got a lot of music-related treats for you all today. How does that sound?
We like music over here.
All right. So the first one is actually a music meets comedy show. And it's with a guy named Gabe Gibbs. And I discovered Gabe on the socials, as we do now. These are where all the stars are born these days.
Tell me about it.
And he has a really interesting story, actually. He grew up in Detroit, and he actually, in high school, he wanted to be a football player. But his freshman year, he busted his collarbone.
Damn.
And you know what he did the next day?
He sang and did comedy.
Almost.
Okay.
He auditioned for Little Shop of Horrors in the drama club.
Boom.
And there is nothing I love more than a jock to nerd story, really.
Yeah.
Right? So that took him to Emerson College, where he got a degree in acting. And then he has gone on to, sort of create this Bo Burnham-esque kind of vibe where he's writing his own material and he's also doing some sort of funny parody material of pop music, but it all culminates into this really fun musical comedy show that is kind of a spoof of musicals, kind of a spoof of cabaret, but is also a mix of original material.
We get a sample?
Yeah. So let's hear one of his musical parodies. We'll listen to the villain in Britney Spears, the musical.
Oops, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in the game. Oh, baby, baby.
A mustache twirling kind of villain.
This is the I do in my house. No disrespect, Gabe.
Wow.
You never taken a song and made it like cabaret style or something?
Well, are you getting paid for it, Daryl? That's my question.
In my spirit, I am, yes. In my spirit.
Maybe we should listen to an original song. Let's see if this hits your funny bone. And this song is actually kind of apropos for the conversation because it is about how football and musical theater are almost the same thing.
A cheerleader's just a rocket in boots. They both get paid to dance. Both of these things have plays and big boys in tight pants.
That actually happened at Emerson College when he came back for a little reunion and did his entire show.
Shout out to Gabe Gibbs. I'm inspired now. The things I do.
You think you can do it, but I'd like to see it.
I'm quitting today. No, but for real, that sounds fun. That sounds like a nice night out. You know, you go and have a few drinks, get a little liquored up.
Yeah, a little cabaret musical
listen to some
vibes.
silly songs.
Totally. And that's actually the name of one of his albums is actually Silly Songs, Sad Songs. So that's the vibe we're talking about. Goofy, silly, fart jokes, wiener jokes, you know, mixing it all together in a little musical snack. And he does have real chops. He actually starred in The Book of Mormon on Broadway and then ended up becoming the lead in the touring production. So there is a theater background that is pretty legit. Yeah. I say if you're looking for a little silly time, go give Gabe a try. He actually will bring you a lot of joy.
Yeah, do that. All right, so that's Gabe Gibbs, September 12th at Laugh Boston.
Mm-hmm.
What else you got for us?
City Hall is at it again, and they are throwing a full-on fiesta in September over the course of 2 weeks.
City Hall Plaza, back at it again.
You know, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture does provide, and this one's called Fiesta en la Plaza, and it's a celebration of Latinx Heritage Month, which I love.
Big up, big up, big up.
They're doing a series of 4 events, actually, over the course of September 15th through 27th. They're starting with a big welcome for everybody in the plaza with performances from a lot of great, amazing local Latinx talent, including Edmar Colon, Elaine Mallier, Manuela Sanchez Guber, and one of my favorites, Fabiola Mendez, who is an expert in the Puerto Rican cuatro. She is just a gorgeous player and a gorgeous singer. She was also named one of our arts and culture teams, the Makers, in 2021.
Well, wait. What is the cuatro? What is the Puerto Rican
think
cuatro?
Think of like, it's almost like a mandolin and like a guitar had a baby. Why don't we hear a song?
Yeah.
How about we hear a song? This one is called Dedicatoria.
Por la canción interminable a Lolita Lebrón por la fiereza.
You hear it?
You're getting tropical, baby.
Yeah, island vibes in September.
You know what I'm saying? I'm with that.
Yeah.
Give me some rum.
Exactly. It's going to be fun. I mean, if that's the kind of music that's going to be hitting City Hall Plaza on the weekend, you want to go down, you want to dance, you want to feel the vibes. But it's not just that. They're also doing an Afro-Latin artist panel, and actually our senior reporter, Cristela Guerra, is going to moderate that conversation.
Ooh.
So you'll get to meet some Afro-Latin artists in the city and get to learn about their art and, you know, figure out where you can actually go and see it. They're actually going to do a small film festival as well, and they're going to play 2 documentaries focused on a small coastal town in Puerto Rico called Loíza. And one is focused on a architectural artist named Daniel Lind Ramos. And the other one is focused on the lives of 8 women as they are celebrating like a traditional religious event within Puerto Rico. And fun fact, if you don't know, but Loíza in Puerto Rico is probably the highest population of Afro-Latin people. So that's right, Daryl. And so I really love that they decided to sort of focus on 2 documentaries that put a spotlight on this region. Maybe people will learn some new things, which is really interesting. And of course, it all culminates in a salsa night, baby. It ends in a salsa night with the band Clave and Blues, and they are also going to perform with a dance group called El Bonche. And this event happened last year as well at City Hall Plaza, and it got rained out. But let me tell you something.
They moved it, right?
They moved it, yes, indoors, and the vibes were still super high.
They kept it going.
People were salsaing in the rain. It was so beautiful. So let's hope not for that. Let's hope it's like an amazing, beautiful day so more people will come out. But either way, you can expect an absolute party.
All right. So that is Fiesta en la Plaza, September 15th through the 27th at City Hall Plaza. Go down there and get you some culture, folks.
And did we mention it's all free?
That's the most important piece.
I know.
Save the best for last.
That's right.
Free 99. How you rounding us out?
So now we're going into music meets the circus. How about that?
Music meets the circus.
No.
Not that? Okay.
That would probably send me the other direction. But this is called Cirque Goes to the Cinema, and it's being hosted by the Boston Pops at Symphony Hall. And this is actually a popular event that they used to do all the time, but they haven't done it since 2017. And it's when they team up, the Boston Pops, with Cirque de la Symphonie, which is a circus troupe that really sort of choreographs routines around classical music. So for Cirque Goes to the Cinema, which is happening on September 20th at Symphony Hall, the Pops are going to perform classic sort of movie soundtracks while the circus performers are performing to them.
So give me an example. What can I expect?
Well, maybe we should hear one.
Now, my guess, there's someone swinging from the ceiling, dropping down, maybe people going up, tightrope walking.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're going to have aerial flyers. They're going to have acrobats, contortionists, dancers, jugglers, balancers. And they make sure that every performance that they do is deliberately minimalist because they want both the music and the circus performance to blend. Like the art should all sort of be cohesive and work together, and one shouldn't overpower the other. So definitely a crowd-pleasing event, a family-friendly event. You know, not everybody's a big fan of the circus, you know, clowns and all that good stuff. How about just the sheer artistry mixed with some gorgeous music? That sounds like a good day.
I would say so. So that's Cirque Goes to the Cinema, September 20th at the Boston Pop Symphony Hall.
Indeed.
All right, Candice, before we go, we got to bring it back to CitySpace. What we got going on this month?
You got one going on this month.
I do.
It's going to be very fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
So our Curated Cuisine series is one of our most popular series at CitySpace. We have done it every single year since we launched in 2019. And our first event for the fall is going to be with Nini Wen. And Nini is a New Orleans-based chef, so you know her food is good because if you are a chef in New Orleans, your food has to be banging. And second, she's also a Top Chef alum. She has been on the regular Top Chef and on Top Chef All-Stars, so she is a real heavy hitter. And she has this new cookbook out called Doc Biet, which is all about Vietnamese cooking. Nini is Vietnamese, and these are sort of all of the recipes that she grew up with, but with a little extra, you know, like a little Salt Bae, a little extra
something.
Flair.
Yeah. I was looking through the book. What I like about it is it's all very approachable, and it has a twist. Very interesting stuff.
And of course, you know, after the interview with Daryl, we will be serving a bite from the book, which everybody will want to stick around for so that you'll get to taste it for yourself.
Okay, so that's September 9th. Curated Cuisine with Nini Wen.
Yep.
What else we got?
You know, we've been doing a lot of music, so let's close it out with some music. On September 27th, we are bringing a folk pop duo named Axel and Lolo to CitySpace. And they are a band that actually applied for NPR's Tiny Desk contest. And so every year, WBUR selects their favorite from all of the national entries, but we narrow it down to just Massachusetts. And Axel and Lolo were the one that they chose. And so they get to perform at CitySpace as part of being chosen, which is really awesome because it allows us the opportunity to feature local music on our stage.
I love that.
Do you want to hear a little bite? Let's hear it.
Like me more if I didn't care about you. You'd like me more if I didn't care about you.
Aww.
I know.
Aww. The kids are in love.
I know. This is what I love about them. They're best friends. They met at Berkeley. They're rounded out by a couple of their fellow Berkeley classmates to create the full band. And they have big dynamics on stage, and they have this chugging energy. So even though that one was a little melancholic or sad, I expect it's going to be a show.
All right, so that's Axel and Lolo, September 27th, with the chugging rhythms. Get ready.
Chug, chug.
Well, Candice, always a good time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming through.
Thank you for having me. Happy fall, everybody.
And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common, sticking with us every week. We really appreciate it. If you want to send us a message, hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common. You can also send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. And now it is that time for me to let you know that The Common is produced by Franny Monahan. It's mixed by Emily Jankowski and Paul Vaitkes. And it's edited by Samatha Joshi and Ben Brock Johnson. And our theme music is Me from Hisu. And from the newsroom of WBUR, I'm your host, Daryl C. Murphy. I will talk to you soon.
Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery, innovation, development, and learning in engineering and science. Listen on for a story of how one company is using MathWorks software to help the planet.
The transportation sector is one of the largest contributors of greenhouse gases, and a lot of that is from maritime transport.
Yeah, maritime transport creates a huge amount of carbon dioxide, about 900 million tons annually.
That's Gus Block, Corporate Development Director at Nuvera Fuel Cells, who explains that 90% of all foreign goods are transported through ports and container ships, most of which run on diesel. But Nuvera is working on a way to electrify this system through hydrogen fuel cells.
Hydrogen can make all the difference between being able to electrify those vessels or not.
Cargo ships often travel far distances.
Well, sometimes they're crossing oceans, right?
And hydrogen, the lightest element on the periodic table, is uniquely suited to help power the ship's long journeys.
Fuel cells can take advantage of hydrogen's properties, being something that is quickly refueled, something you can carry on board a vehicle, and be used in places where battery electrification is impractical for one reason or another.
One reason, batteries can be really heavy. Another, batteries can take a long time to charge.
That may be possible for hovercraft or for ferries, for instance, but for long-haul shipping, it's quite a different story. And what hydrogen gets you is the ability to carry much more energy on board than you would otherwise with batteries.
And in addition to powering cargo ships, hydrogen fuel cell technology can be used to power electric trucks, heavy equipment, and also passenger cars. So, how do hydrogen fuel cells work?
A fuel cell is an electrochemical device. Each individual cell in the stack consists of a membrane that separates hydrogen on one side and air on the other.
And, as Nuvera Chief Engineer Pierre-François Kay explains, the hydrogen arrives at the membrane, breaks down into protons and electrons, generating power for a motor, all without the need to burn fossil fuels. In fact, they produce no exhaust other than heat and water. But implementation of this technology is no easy feat, with several challenges to overcome.
One of our main challenges that we face is hydration management.
The membrane needs to be hydrated to be permeable to protons, but too much water can cause flooding, and the fuel cell will not operate properly.
So with model-based design using MATLAB and Simulink, we created a model of the fuel cell, and that allowed us to simulate our water management controls in a variety of ambient conditions.
Model-based design. I needed to check with someone from MathWorks, the creator of MATLAB and Simulink, to fully understand what's happening.
Well, Companies like Nuvera, who are using MATLAB and Simulink, are using it to model and simulate a complex engineered system. For Nuvera, it's a chemical reaction involving hydrogen as a fuel, which then is combined with air to form an electric current and water.
That's Tony Lennon, the Simscape marketing manager at MathWorks, who explains that model-based design allows Nuvera to virtually simulate how the hydrogen fuel cell will operate in real time and to tackle challenges like hydration management virtually before using physical components.
Not using model-based design means that you're going to be out there testing on real hardware. You run the risk of damaging hardware or not thoroughly testing all the operating envelope that the real equipment's going to see.
And operating real hardware can take a lot of time. Pierre-Francois K. again.
There's a huge advantage to simulate all of these conditions in a virtual environment instead of building systems physically, because those are expensive, and every time we need to change a piece of hardware, it takes time.
Saving this time can mean more innovation and, in the case of Nuvera, more fuel cells to power the clean energy transition.
To learn more about MathWorks and Nuvera, and for more stories, check out WBUR.org/MathWorks.